What would you do if the person you loved most became someone you no longer recognized, and no matter how hard you tried, you couldn't bring them back? Beautiful Boy by David Sheff is a memoir, meaning it's a personal account told by the author's, David Sheff's, perspective. It primarily focuses on addiction, but I also thought it covered the emotional complexity of family, the limits of control, and what it means to love someone through something you can't fix right away, especially if it's an unpredictable and most of the time unrelatable time. The characters are David Sheff, the father, and his son Nick, who is addicted to various types of drugs. And there is also David's ex-wife and his current wife, and then his two kids he had with his new wife, named Daisy and Jasper. I really thought that it was interesting that David was very honest and open. Usually that's hard for someone to do, and he mentions that he wasn't viewed as a perfect parent, and he agrees with that. He mentions how he always questioned himself, how much he felt guilt, and how he struggled to understand what went wrong with Nick. And I just really loved how real and honest and open all of it was. And he also shows that Nick is not just someone with an addiction, but he was a person with intelligence, creativity, and potential to be more than what he is. And he does that through a backstory, or all of Nick's childhood. The first part, the book is broken into multiple parts. The first part up until about here, it's all childhood stories and talking about Nick and his back and forth between his father and his mother. And I think that was very important for David to do, so you could understand where Nick was coming from, and then it makes it easier later on in the book to relate it back to older memories. And this setting takes place across multiple locations. Of course, his parents are split, so they are living in two different places, so he's constantly going back and forth. Nick is primarily in California, though, with his father, and it spans over several years. And I think that shifting reflects Nick's life, and it kind of see his perspective on why he started using drugs. And instead of it being one single moment, it's shown through the entire book, so it's a cycle that affects his everyday life and his relationships. For the interest level, I say it's not very exciting in good terms, but it's very engaging because of the emotional intensity and honesty. It's for more mature audiences. There's, of course, drugs, alcohol, and a lot of that there's swearing too, if everyone's sensitive to that. And it's for sure slower pace. That first part, you talk about Nick being found with drugs. I think it's 2 times, and then you get to the second part, and it's talking about his drug of choice. The third part is his constant relapses and his rehabs, and it's really slow paced, but it's interesting, and it keeps your attention because it constantly makes you think of how Nick feels, and if you can really help someone who doesn't want the help. And that's shown through Nick, because he's constantly declining help when he's using, but as soon as he stops using, he always wants help. So it's very hard to understand what he wants, and most of the time he does not want that help. What stood out to me was the idea that love isn't always enough to solve a problem. And that's how David responds to Nick, is through love. But it doesn't affect Nick in any way. It just makes him more angry and more likely to run off. So I think through that, David realizes that he can't answer like that, and he just has to take a step back and be there for Nick in whatever way he needs. I also thought that reading the book made me build more empathy. I understood how exhausting and confusing and painful it is to care for someone that was in a situation through David's story. So I grew more empathy for those struggling with addiction and those around addicts and how they respond to the situation. One of the most meaningful moments to me, and I think many others who have read this book, is when David realizes that no matter how much he tries to support his son, he can't control his choices. So when I talked about the limits of control earlier with the main themes of the book, that's kind of what I meant. David tries to control Nick through the first half of the book, and he realizes that it doesn't work, and it's just making Nick more angry, and it's not helping him. So he realizes that he can't control his actions. He can only respond the way Nick needs him to. And I'll read a little bit from the first page. Howdy, Pop. God, I miss you so much. I can't wait to see you all. One more day. Woohoo. Nick is emailing from college on the evening before he arrives home for summer vacation. Jasper and Daisy, our 8 and 5-year-olds, are sitting in the kitchen counter, cutting, pasting, and coloring notes and a welcome home banners for his homecoming. They have not seen their big brother in 6 months. Lastly, I really enjoyed reading this book. It is kind of a more sensitive topic, but it really makes you think and grow more empathy for those who are affected by addicts and addicts themselves. Nick has written his own book to go along, through his perspective, of course, and it's called Tweak. Nick has been sober for over 13 years now, and there's also a movie called Beautiful Boy based off of this book and a little bit of Tweak. Lastly, the book is on AR. It's a 6.5 and it has 19 points.